Hi there, welcome back if you've watched my videos before. If you haven't, welcome. My name's Catherine, I'm a professional tarot card reader. Now, if you've watched some of the videos before, then you will probably have started with the Fool. That's a good place to start. Hopefully you have, and you're now ready to do the mini guide on the Magician. If you've watched the Fool, you'll know that I have a tendency to do this. However, at the moment, I also have a dual camera setup, so like this. I can do that and try not to catch the light in it too much, and that should enable you to see the card better than if I wiggle it about at you like this. But old habits die hard. I may still wiggle. So, mini guide to the Magician. The Magician, while being technically the second major arcana card, is actually numbered 1. What is the traditional meaning? Well, most people will use the traditional meaning of mastery, becoming an expert at something, taking on the learning to gain experience. Me personally, when I get this card in a reading, it tends to, particularly with people of, say, my own age, without giving my age away, they say mid-40s. Mid-30s to mid-40s, when I see this card show up, I often find that that person is thinking about going back to university, re-entering formal education, which I think is actually a good meaning for this card, because, as I say, the traditional meaning is mastery over something, learning, knowledge, intellect. How do the cards illustrate this? Play with the cameras. Well, as you can see, he is a magician. He has a wand that he's raising up. It's not the same wand that is in the suits. How do we know that? Because on the table are 4 representations of the suits. I tend to interpret that as the 4 seasons. If you've watched the video, you've watched the little video on intro to the suits, you'll see how I talk about how they can represent seasons. And I often feel that having those 4 on the table illustrates that you need all aspects and that you need time. Things happen in a cycle. There's a season for everything, at the risk of going biblical or bursting into song. There is a season for things, there is a progression through the seasons. I think that is well illustrated by the table. If you've seen the video on the Fool, you'll know that I like to play compare and contrast with the Marseille deck. Now, the Magician there, again, he's got his little name here and he's got his number there, so they're the same. The colours are a bit different. As you can see, a lot of yellow compared with red and blue. Funnily enough, kind of what we saw with the Fool. The Rider-Waite-Smith deck has its particular palette. The Marseille deck has its particular palette, and you will find that all through our little videos and all through our comparisons. But again, it's worth noting. We can also look at the differences. Here, he's got on the table a representation of our 4 suits. He does not. Let's play with the cameras again. As you can see, he has the tools of his trade. We don't necessarily know what that trade is. However, traditionally, that trade is a cobbler. Those who are unsure what a cobbler is somebody who makes shoes. And there he has the tools of his trade. I am under the impression that that was something that required an awful lot of skill and took an awful long time to learn, which is maybe why it came to be the thing that represents the Magician in certain decks, particularly older decks. But interesting anyway. So that's the traditional meaning, and I've given you my interpretation, how I apply that. Again, you're talking mastery and experience. It could be that you need to gain experience or mastery. If somebody's talking about what direction is my life going to go in, as I say, I often think of it as training, often formal, not just like having a mentor, but actually going to like university, some sort of institute. If somebody's talking about the decision of should I go to uni or should I go traveling or something like that, if the magician shows up, often, like I say, that talks about experience, but it talks about knowledge and intellectual based experience. So that could steer you in that direction. That's one of those times where the traditional meaning and my own interpretation lines up quite nicely. But again, as per my instructions with the Fool, have a look at the card, think about various meanings, think about symbolism, compare and contrast with something from a different deck. And it doesn't have to be a Marseille deck. You could compare it with something like this. This is the Buckland Romani deck. There we go. Thrill, the magician, is represented by a woman in this one. It's quite rare in decks. The Wild Unknown. Again, same sort of symbolism. The four suits represented. Infinity represented. And again, as per my instruction in the Fool, feel free to get a card from a cheap deck, slap a sticker on the back, put your keyword on there that will form your skeleton, and then put your ideas, your interpretations based on things like color, symbolism. What does the background say to you? What do you think? What does that card make you think of? Compare it with other cards. See what you think. See what you can come up with. Again, if you want to know how to interpret this card in a more negative position or reverse, if you read reversals, or if you're interested in learning how, and of course, how to use the card for timing, then watch the more in-depth video. And if you want to see the in-depth video and you want a notification, subscribe. And if you like the video, please feel free to hit like. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.